Well, good morning, my dear friend. Are you there?
Good morning. I am here with coffee, and I just realized that my coffee cup matches my sweater. That was unintentional, but how wonderful.
That is, and at 5:30 in the morning, no less, here we are. Good thing we're zealous morning people, right?
Right? Yes. Here's to morning.
Here's to morning. I'm on water because I had my coffee at 3 a.m. So it's already my midnight. But I am very happy to be here with you so early in the morning on this Friday. Happy Friday to everyone out there. And on World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, which is such a long-winded, antiquated phrase, but the United Nations in 2013 came up with that. And I believe while we agree every day should be World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, it is nice to pay homage, certainly, to these calendar designated days, and hopefully do a little good and raise some awareness and relink people to concepts such as overcoming shame and PTSD and anxiety that can be related to surviving the surviving, as you always articulately say, when it comes to the aftermath of assault or war or financial beleaguerment or the loss of a loved one. You know, I think that we all have some kind of trauma or drama, and the finesse is to dance with it a little better. But I want you to get to say hello to everyone. And I just want to then share how proud I am to be aligned with you, working in tandem because of all that you do. But my friend, Catherine and Wilson here, tell them about your organization and you.
Okay. I was just, I have a sense of humor, and I'm thinking, who are you and what do you do? Hi, I'm Catherine Ann Wilson. I like long walks on the beach now. So I'm the founder of Stop Trafficking US, an apropos title for this morning. And my website is stoptraffickingus.org. It's a small nonprofit, but powerful nonprofit here on the very stormy side of Sebago Lake in Standish, Maine this morning. Been the nonprofit for, gosh, I was thinking 6 or 7. I might be coming up on the 7th year now, but we've been really busy here doing educational stuff. What is human trafficking? What is sex trafficking? And what is near and dear to our team's heart is child sexual abuse prevention. Period. We believe that is the genesis, not only the human trafficking, but so much more. So we do a lot of preventative, educational, and groups with survivors. We support the 2 local houses for survivors here in Maine. Courage Lives and Sophia's House is the 2. Also have done a ton of work with the local juvenile detention center here, Long Creek Youth Center. We work with trafficked individuals all over the country, mostly here in the state of Maine, doing education for first responders. I'm on the advisory for the Cumberland County Child Advocacy Center and an advisory position for Dr. Finkelhor's work. He's got a specific program out of the University of New Hampshire right now on best practices for law enforcement in dealing with sex trafficked minors. So just a little bit about who I am and what we do here.
I love that. And I am Laurie Beth Robbins, and it is an honor to share space and time with you, not only because I love and respect you as a friend and a human being, but I'm also fiercely proud because in addition to all that you do, and that was just a modicum of it or a fraction of what you do, but I've seen you stuff bags and take things to survivors. I've seen you rally and fundraise to get dental work done for them. I've seen you do so much. And you also had the honor of being selected and summoned and invited to the White House, lest we forget, to join other faith leaders and be part of a discussion in the Roosevelt Room, no less, about potential solutions with this epidemic that is really a pandemic in itself of such global proportion now more than ever and more prevalent in our news, thankfully, than ever, and awareness is raised. But you went to the White House, and from that invitation, of the roundtable discussion, if you will, you were also put into the pool of what would be survivor-based selections to join a steering committee in efforts to do some good with this. And that is such an honor when you think about the people who were selected, lest we forget you are a brave and courageous survivor yourself. So I'm very humbled, honored, and delighted to do this together and to share space with someone who certainly understands it and also has been very integral in my healing as a survivor of international sex slavery and trafficking abroad. I'm a very lucky woman to still be here, as they say, having just narrowly escaped by a harrowing trek. And I think that when we dive into the topic of shame, it's something very relatable, whether someone is a survivor or not. And I think it's very important for all of us to understand how to dance with our past that we cannot change. And so it behooves us to really instead embrace the range of how to deal with that.
Absolutely. You know, when you and I first started talking and you told me about, you know, your adventure of being 27, you know, we know that the average age into sex trafficking is 12 to 14. And you were 27, you were a grown adult and misled by a job opportunity that wasn't there when you arrived in Greece. And, you know, that was a Lifetime Channel type story. And boy, haven't we heard unfortunately, so many of stories like that. They're real. That stuff, you know, happens. But what touched my heart about your story was your shame.
Yeah.
You know, they don't talk about that when you watch the evening news or 2020 is covering a story or whatever. But over and over and over again, men and women will perhaps wait in line to speak to me after speaking engagement. And, you know, they'll tell me that one thing, you know, that one ball and chain that just keeps them locked in this feeling of shame, keep them from moving forward. And if human beings would just talk about it, share their truth, and shed light on how they're feeling, and all these other people say, well, I went through that too, and that makes sense. It's just freeing. So yeah. That's one of the gifts of, you know, survivors being there for other survivors. And you know, I've been on different committees where I'm I want to say token survivor. People want to say, oh, we have a survivor on our team. We have a survivor in our group. But then the survivor just sits there, you know, because the rest of the people are, you know, maybe police officers and service providers and you know, whatever group you belong to. And the survivor's usually the only one not paid at the table, is the one sort of sitting there like, you know, what's my value? Like, why am I here? You're not asking me anything. I was on one group, and they let me in, kind of like the big kids group. They were discussing a case, and this was my first time, and I didn't know what was to be expected of me. Yes. And they were talking about a situation that I was very familiar with, like if you were on a group and someone was talking about being offered a job overseas, you'd be like, hey, I've got some value on that one. That happened to me. I know I can share my experience regarding that. And I did, about the case they were talking about, just maybe 3-4 minutes, right? I shared, and there was crickets. They just looked around like, you're not supposed to do that, right? And never invited back again. And that, you know, I'm not good enough to be in that group. Or people don't know what to, frequently don't know what to, you know, how do you use survivors? How are survivors best utilized? And we were a perfect example of that. Because when you and I spoke, I was able to share, different things that had happened to me, in an effort to make you feel comfortable. So you would know, hey, I'm a safe person and I've been there. And in sharing some of those experience, strength, and hope with you, it alleviated some secret shame that you were going through. And then boom, you just bloomed and you were able to help so many people. You wrote something, the commune, right? Is that the name of the thing?
Yes.
You've been writing, and thousands of people have read what you've written, and you could have written this so long. Timing is, divine timing, and there are no accidents in life. But wow, just that one conversation, survivors helping survivors, human beings offering a safe place for other human beings, relieving that shame, and people can really grow and thrive from that place.
They really can. And I think that you really hit it on the head, that it is so integral and vital in the recipe for healing and dealing. There's a beautiful meme that circulates across social media platforms that says so well, it is not your fault what happened to you, but it is your responsibility to heal from it. And I could not agree more, in the sense that I think it is so important. And in order to heal from that, in order to mend and matriculate in society as the best version of ourselves that we can be, part of that is talking to other survivors. Part of it is talking about your trauma and drama and getting it out of you. We can't change our past. As the late, great Maya Angelou said so eloquently, history with all of its wrenching pain cannot be unlived, but when it is met with courage, it need not be lived again. And similarly, of course, Kierkegaard said that life can be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. And I think that whether we draw wisdom from the Great Dane and theologian and philosopher and poet, or the American poet and civil rights activist with her impassioned signature cadence, I think that we look at civil rights and we look at existentialism, which was clearly the wheelhouse and specialty of Kierkegaard. And the common thread in that message is that the very nature of our existence and surviving and hopefully thriving, therefore, is in the freedom of us making our own choices. And we have the choice and must make it to live, to heal, to mend, to live very well, to live forward. And part of that is talking about our past, surrendering into our story to get it out of us, talking to other survivors who understand it so that you can navigate this shame, and the forgiveness of understanding, which is fiercely important, that you are not the same woman that you were when you were in that. You were not the same woman 2 seconds afterward. You were not the same woman a year later. You are not the same woman today. And so you must be compassionate about how you behaved, whatever you did to survive, whatever you experienced, why you were there, whatever it be. And I think that when you look at it coherently today, if you are talking and getting it out, if you are liaising with other survivors, you then link up to that forgiveness and ability and capability to better navigate that and understand that you are a different person today, and one has nothing to do with the other, in the sense that don't berate yourself and continue. This PTSD or grief, as you know, never really goes away per se, but I believe we can learn to dance with it a hell of a lot better than how we initially did when so shell-shocked. And part of it is through communication, and part of it is understanding you can't change that past, but you can make peace with it. So there's a lot that when we look at it in a forgiving, compassionate light, when we look at the difference of who we are today, that beautiful timing comes about. We have people in our lives, such as yourself, who have relinked us up to that courage. As the great Maya said, that when it is met with courage, it need not be lived again. So we have a choice, and the choice is powerful, but we must make it and surrender to our story, not surrender to shame. Shame is that vicious animal that will keep you spiraling in it. And then you store that trauma on the body and in the mind, and it's just a vicious, unhealthy cycle.
There's well said, and I love it when you do your quotes, because my old age brain stuff has fallen off, but you remember, and I love hearing your quotes. I love the way you speak.
Thank you.
I was thinking about, and I wonder if it's right. Hang on, let me see if the book is right. It's out of reach here. Yeah, it is. I love this book. It's called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Such an important thing. I remember being, I think I was 18 or 19, and I was in a group for women that were suffering from panic attacks. And every woman in the group had some sort of trauma, 1, 2, or more. And I was seeing a Christian therapist on a weekly basis, and the group on a weekly basis. And I did not believe that I was a victim. And the other women in the group were like actively angry with me because they were like, you are a victim, right? And you can't make somebody, I just chose at the time in my life. I just thought that as a child, I was a whore, and Jesus forgave me. And I'm good. I don't, and that was my stance. And that's what I believed. And there came a time when I was 25, that a situation happened and the light switch came on. It was the right time, the right place, the right whatever. And I realized that I kind of can't be a whore when you're, in first grade. And then with that epiphany of, well, maybe I wasn't a whore. And then it was just like ching, 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 ching. And everything started falling into place. And I was ready to start the healing process with the truth of, okay, I was sexually abused in first grade, and then, 1,000 more times in my life. But what happens for many survivors, male and female, is they don't believe that what happened to them, they believe it was their fault, that they deserved it somehow. They let the other person off the hook. Most children, so 1 in 5 children are sexually abused. They're sexually abused by somebody that they know and trust. And they kind of go through this period of confusion, which is just totally normal. And it's normal. People react to what has happened to them in their own way, and including comparisons. Like, because in my, when I was just about 50, I came out. I wasn't out before then, but being so old coming out, I got to witness people's reactions from a more mature frame of mind, and to see people say, well, I was only raped once, or there wasn't even intercourse. So they're judging what happened to them. They're judging their response. They're living in that shame that you were talking about. And then they're judging whatever they needed to do to survive in the moment. They're judging their bodies. I can't tell you how many men had a sexual experience when they were younger, or whatever age, doesn't matter. And their body is biological. So their body, had an orgasm and set them off into this crazy confusion. Like, does this mean I'm bisexual or homosexual? Does this mean that I wanted it? Does it, and they make up all these, meanings about it. And they start off on this sort of vicious cycle about it. And the guilt, the shame, the comparison is just wild, right? And so we've got all this sort of, and I see this so often, and I saw this in the juvenile detention center where the lovely people are trying to help the child deal with what had happened to her, when secretly, it's always that secretly, she's saying to me, finally, I know what happened to me. I'm upset about what I did to my cousins, what I did to the children around me. Yes, my mom held me down while her boyfriend raped me. That's how I lost my virginity at 12. But what's got me, in addiction is what I did to my cousins, and how do you speak to that? Or somebody in relationship with their brother, in an intimate relation, brother, as a estranged brother, it's out of their life, estranged brother comes back, situation at home is awful, that the young girl goes to live with her big brother, they're romantic, nobody know, so many offenders create this romance, either love or fear, sort of bring the victim in. And the victim saying, I love him. How do I? And the secret and the shame it's always all the secret and shame. I love this book because it talks about, so here is this intelligent man in the concentration camp. They've killed his family. They've pulled the gold out of his teeth. They've starved and tortured him. And he's, as a psychiatrist, he's looking at everything that's going on in the concentration camp. And he's like, you can't control what's happened to you, certainly in the idea from the perspective of a victim, right? You can't control everything that happens to you in life, but you have absolute control over how you choose to respond to it.
Yes.
How are you going to respond to it? And I am a huge fan of the power of pretending. And I would not be where I am or who I am if I didn't use the power of pretending to choose to forgive and to choose to find joy and to choose to do my work and to choose, whether or not it's true or not. Do I know that something bad isn't going to happen to me? No, I don't know. But I choose to live as if everything is right in my life and do everything I can to set it up that way, because I can go through this day in fear or I can go through this day with joy. And I choose to pretend that this is going to be an amazing day and have it be joy. I choose to forgive. I choose to fill in the blank. That power of pretending. So for you, Laurie Beth, on your healing journey, moving from surviving into thriving, how has that been? How has the shame played a role in your life, and how have you de-shackled yourself from that?
Well, you raised so many great points with all of that. And particularly when you said that so many people compare and they compare their situations. And that's one of the ways to shed the shame right there, is that it doesn't work like that. We all suffer. We all are here on different journeys. We all have experienced a trauma, a drama. We all have navigated the vicissitudes of life very differently. And we all came into this lifetime with a different set of genetics and DNA and parents and experiences and things in myriad forms where you can't compare. You can't, one thing has nothing to do with the other. So I love that you mentioned that. And of course, the iconic Frankel you know, Viktor Frankl being so big on the fact that nobody can take away with that formidable weapon up here what you choose to believe, as you intimated with your pretending, which is where the bravery is, and all of it. And just on Frankl, of course, Dr. Edith Eger, who studied tutelage of Viktor Frankl and even got to eulogize him as her dear friend. But she, of course, is a New York Times bestseller now, a psychologist in her 90s, who, if not for the COVID lockdown, would still be seeing patients, no less. And talk about survivors thriving. But she wrote 2 books, both written and published in her 90s, one being The Choice, about us choosing, as Frankl says, and as we agree, to choose the good attitude, choose to have joy, choose to have a peaceful life, choose forgiveness, instead of choosing to be miserable and all of it. The best revenge, you know, Sinatra said the best revenge is massive success. I have to agree. The best revenge is not to hold on to your pain as if it means something. And answering your shame question about mind navigation, the best revenge is to go live an abundant, fabulous, glowing, peaceful, joyous, healthy, happy life. And that is the best revenge to those Balkan bad boys that ever could exist. But I will say that Edith Eger, who also was a Holocaust survivor, also wrote The Gift, another little, almost a gift book, if you will, with some things. And one of the mentions in there, as far as navigating shame and these things, which has helped me in answering your question, is Dr. Eger suggests you go back as the woman you are today in your mind's eye, and you go back to the scenes, whether it be from your atrocity involving surviving, or whether it be from bullying in younger years in school, whether it be from home life episodes, whatever it be. You go back to your moments, the pivotal moments of pain, and as who you are now, and you go in and you save her or him. And there may be other people, cousins, teachers, other people you have to forgive too, who did what they knew how to do. And you go back in with the wisdom, with the prowess, with the poise, with everything you are today, again, showcasing very well that you are not the same person that you were then. And you therefore eradicate and let that little girl or boy or whoever it is know that they never have to hold on to that shame anymore, because now you've got them. Now you're going to look out for them. Now you weren't there for them before, but now you are. And so that was, believe it or not, one of the most reinvigorating, self-aware exercises for me, and really worked. So I think anyone who can find The Gift by Edith Eger, you can certainly get it on Amazon, but she was under the tutelage of Frankl, Viktor Frankl. And I would say both your book of Man's Search for Meaning and Edith Eger's books as well are tremendously helpful. And I think that we have to talk, we have to get it out, we have to have forgiveness. And what you described in your crusade of pretending, of choosing joy, is where all the bravery dwells anyway. It's victor over victim. And when we succumb to that self-indulgent pity party, there is no courage in that. And so every time I catch myself on a low day, or when the skies are gray, I mean, no one is immune to having those weak moments where you start to feel sorry for yourself and have a little bit of a self-indulgent moment. But I always pinch myself, and I realize that to play the victim, even for 5 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, is not only not productive, but the courage isn't in that. The courage is in choosing the joy. The courage is in choosing to forgive the self, to move forward, to choose a life, to make the choice, and to make it a commitment with veracity to heal, to mend, to give yourself that gift so that you can be a gift to society. So I think it's very important. You know, I'm always, quotes just come out of me, but I love words and speaking. But Emerson, one of my favorite Emerson quotes, bar none, is that God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. And so I think we have to dig so deeply down, and we have to find the courage. And one way to do that is to vocalize, is to unite and liaise with other trafficking survivors such as yourself, and to choose joy, to go back in with the exercise, save the girl. Remember that you're not that person today. Now you've got her. Now you'll look out for her. Make it a crusade. And there's honor in that. There really is. And there's courage in that. And it's helped me tremendously.
You know, I was thinking, I think that, at least for me, I felt like I didn't belong. The sun is coming. Yay!
Yeah, you brought it. You brought the light. You brought the sun.
Yeah, we have a bunch of storms been rolling through. So, you know, I felt as a child and for a big part of my younger life, like a misfit, you know, just like on that holiday show, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, when there was an island of misfit toys. I thought, boy, I wish there was an island of misfit children. I didn't feel like I belonged on the planet. I felt like God made a mistake, and I wasn't mad at him or her. I just felt like there was a legit mistake. I was in the wrong era. I just didn't seem to think like other people, or I just didn't fit. I just didn't feel like I fit in, and I didn't, and confused because I didn't have the playbook. Like the playbook of life was out there somewhere. Somebody was, you know, getting it and, you know, playing it, but not me. And I think one of the greatest gifts I've gotten, you know, over my life is understanding, you know, the more things that I went to, you know, the Hoffman Institute and landmark education and hypnotherapy and like Gestalt therapy and brain scans and like every kind of therapy you can imagine I've done, group and self-help. And the value of it wasn't just in the education that I got for my own healing, but a big part of it was looking at all the different kinds of people who are right there with me. You know, one of the cool thing about 12-step groups is that, you know, you go to a 12-step group and you're going to have, you know, a billionaire and a homeless person, and it just gives you perspective. And for me, seeing all these different kinds of people, and you would never in a million years look at that person and imagine, you know, the living hell they were in that beautiful 5-star life, or the beauty and the love that they were given in that, you know, poverty situation or whatever. It just gives this great perspective that everybody has something. And so that power of pretending is for me, when I look at human beings and I'm like, real, like truly, they're not better than me. Because that's where I came from. I came from a perspective of less than. And I know that there are some survivors who, for their own protection, choose to go better than. I get it. And I totally get why. I chose to go less than. So everybody was better. Everybody was smarter. And I was a pathetic, you know, slug. So for me, as time went by and hearing all these different stories, I was like, wow, some stories are really worse than mine. And some stories aren't as bad as mine. And then there's mine. And then there are some like, and it was just like, wow, we all have something. And if we let go of comparison, because each person was affected the same, you know, like if emotional pain was on a scale of 1 to 10, this person who had, you know, hardly anything, you know, from my mind, happened to him or her, but their pain is a level 10. And this person who had awful things, or let's say that person was a level 5, the person had awful things, that person is a level 5, and I'm at a level 5. So what I came to learn was it doesn't really matter like what the severity of or duration or how many times something awful happened to somebody. What mattered was how it affected them. And in that, we're all the same because pain is pain is pain. Right. And then it was like, okay, so I don't need to compare my story or my pain. And I can help other people who have a story to do the same, to not compare their severity or duration or how many times something awful happened to them, or even comparing their pain. Yeah. There was such freedom in just accepting that everybody has something, even if they're not talking about it, and then that sort of helped me get through life. So somebody is behaving really badly, is being mean to me, is being whatever. I can have compassion for that because that's not a person's true nature, right? If somebody's being, just a terrible person, that's not their true nature. There's a reason, something happened to that person to make them that way. And so I can put up my boundary and say, how you're treating me is inappropriate and you've hurt my feelings. And here's what I respectfully request, and then remove myself from the situation or do whatever tools I know about being in relation to the world and having my own self boundaries. I can put those tools into place, but I don't have to fix them. I don't have to accept being treated that way. That was really freeing for me to sort of not do that, and to have an understanding that if I am alive, if I woke up to the sunrise this morning, that I have a purpose. Yes. Not because fill in the blank, but choosing to believe the power of pretending that because I woke up and saw the sunrise, that I have a purpose for being here. And my goal for the day is how can I take good care of the suit that I was given? Yeah. Right. And the mind that I was given, and how can I live a good life and be in service to others? And that was, so the purpose, like I thought, I'm a survivor and a victim, and what good am I? I suck at math. I didn't graduate ninth grade. I don't have some of the skill set. I don't talk like other people or think like I'm me. So what purpose could I possibly have? And, then I went on to make a 6-figure income in national sales. Didn't see that coming, but that's not even it either. It's just like, what is my purpose? And that sales job was just me showing up and being kind and offering something of value in a kind and loving way. I can do that every day in the grocery store. I can do that in the gym. I can do that with my neighbors. Purpose is just being a beacon of light and love and understanding. So knowing that I'm not broken, I have value, I'm equal to everybody else, not better, not less. And I have a purpose for being here. I have value, and for me, choosing to believe that my value is being a beacon of love and light and understanding on this planet in every tiny little thing, because how I do anything is how I do everything. So in all things, being kind, in all things, having compassion with boundaries, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And oh boy, do you have a purpose. And oh boy, are you a beacon of light and the sunshine. I'm convinced you brought that sunshine, because nobody has done more of that self-awareness, growth, internal, introspective work than you have. I mean, I am always beyond impressed and flabbergasted with how much you have dug so deeply down and done all of those things, and from Tony Robbins, from modern day to old age, sage page wisdom, you have seen it, done it, dug through it, and emerged so evolved, so clear. I marvel in so many of your TV appearances and interviews, how sentient, how composed, how together and calm, cool, and collected you have been without breaking down about such a tender topic. And that is a testament to how brilliant and how much you have chosen to navigate that animal and not to rot in shame, but to heal and deal and really be that beacon of light that you are. And I think that what you illustrated in sharing that, and I love that you shared that and how you felt, because no one would know that you felt inferior when they hear you and they see how much you have commandeered the good for other people like me and so many other survivors and everyone who is blessed to bump up against you even for a moment, even online and certainly offline. And I've had the pleasure of both. But I think that no one would guess that you had any of these inhibitions, that you ever came from a place of shame or felt less than. And that points out that as we live amid a milieu of such divisiveness en masse, whether it be about political doings, whether it be about COVID-19 precautionary methods or people who vaccinate or don't vaccinate, whether it be about eating choices today with the plant-based movement and carnivores, people are jumping at the bit, particularly on social media today, amid divisiveness. And one of the things you just articulated in so many ways is that we all, underneath the surface, certainly have a lot more in common than not. And one of them is the pain. As you said so beautifully, pain is pain is pain, in that it doesn't matter what socioeconomic bracket one is in. It doesn't matter what education they had. It doesn't matter what family upbringing they had. We all have experienced pain. We all know what pain is. It is not one better or worse than the other. And so I think it is very important to have that compassionate heart and realize you never, ever know what somebody is going through. You never, ever know what you were carrying around inside of yourself as feelings of self-doubt. Comparatively, you never ever know. And so what we can come together on is the universal tenet and concept of being kind. And I think it behooves us all, when you go into the grocery store, you have no idea what the checkout gal or guy's life is. You have no idea what they've experienced. And we get in our own ego and hastily judge and curmudge and begrudge all kinds of people, whether they're behaving badly or we are, because we don't like something that triggered something within us when we saw it in them. Whatever it be, if we pull back and understand, as you so eloquently shared, that we all have felt pain. And so can you come at people with a little more of an open heart and understand that we all have that, and it's not greater or less, but may we treat people with that understanding. And I think if everyone even did that a tiny bit more in each day, then a lot of this divisiveness is something that we would slay in a different modality. I really do. So I think that just you sharing how you felt is something nobody would assume when they see you in action and they even get to meet you. So I love that you so candidly did give us a window into that, if you will, because I think more people out there should understand that we're all in this world together, as we all know, and pain is something very real. And the pandemic, one of the perhaps silver linings of the pandemic, because there's one in everything, is that not dissimilarly to 9/11, this is something that has affected everybody, either as personal suffering or collective suffering, nationwide, globally, universally. And therefore, everybody has had to either adapt, adjust, or complain and dwell in it and get worse. And so I think that it hopefully will bring and unite this nation and the world more so, just as 9/11 did at that atrocity and horrendous time. But I'm hoping that as we discuss shame, as we discuss surviving the surviving, as we shed a little light on this World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, that we can come together as persons who really have more in common from the almighty notion of pain than we do apart. And if we are cognizant about that, I believe that we all do some good. I really do. It's one of these, as I say.
Right. I love it when you do that. One of these. You know that when we understand that we're not better and we're not less than, when we understand that when we are in our true highest self, we're kind and loving, and so are other people. And when people aren't being that way, they're not being their true self, that something has happened to them. So we can have compassion, again, with boundaries. When we're in that place, it's just easy. It's sort of like when you're in love, that honeymoon phase. To me, that if I were to say what the true nature looks like, what our true nature feels like, what our how it is to be in our true nature, it would be like that. But not in love with a person, just that in love, you're happy, you let people off the hook. You can speak your truth with kindness, you have healthier boundaries, you wake up happy. It's just this groovy place. And when we walk around like that as our true highest self, and we can even, by the way, pretend, okay, if I was in love, what would that feel like? How would I, if I was that highest person, if I was my best version of myself, what would the best version of myself do this morning? What time would the best version of myself wake up? What kind of breakfast would the best version of me eat? What would, blah, 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 blah. And it's from that place that we can be who I believe we're called to be, which is the superheroes of the world. Like our nature is to be in our feminine or our masculine, and that has nothing to do with gender. Just whoever your particular energy is, and to be the superhero for the planet. For I just saw your dogling go by, for our pets, for our children, for our spouse, for our neighborhood, for our communities. In order for bad things to happen to children, unhealthy people need to have access to them. And in order to have access to them, there needs to be an open channel, either, and I mean that on internet, I mean that in groups and clubs where an adult is allowed to take a child off, vulnerable. And that is where those superhero people who are, perfectly imperfect, these spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And that's my perception of human beings, is that we are spiritual beings having this human experience and having to remember that we are all drops of the same infinite ocean, no yes. better than, no less than, but manifesting as an ocean or a river or a stream or a puddle or a raindrop or a tear. It's all the same. So as that spiritual being having a human experience, I am looking for a way, not thinking that all human beings are awful, because the truth is it's only about 5%. When yes. we look, when we look at all the priests in the Catholic Church, you talk to a Catholic and they say, it was everybody, it was all the priests, and it wasn't. It was 5%. And of that 5%, and I think that's true for communities. So 5% are doing the awful things, and half of the 5% are just, people doing to others what was done to them. And the other half of that 5% are people who are biologically broken. There's they are sexually attracted to children. That's how they were born. That they can't help it. That's just their thing. And then there's all the variations of that. Some people are just babies. Some people are like that pre-adolescent 10 to 13 time period. Some it's just boys or just girls or whatever. So in order to have an effective molestation or abuse, you need three things. You need somebody who has the inclination to do so for whatever reason. You have to have a vulnerable child, and I would say, or a vulnerable person. And I would say that every child and every human being is vulnerable.
Yeah.
Period. And then you need to have access. And that's where we have our power, right? That's where we can make the most difference. As our perfectly imperfect self, we see a situation, we have a gut feeling. When we've done our work and we're not like the walking wounded, totally obsessed by, our issues and judging ourselves and others and feeling shame. And when we're out of the fog of that madness and the fog is lifted and we can see clearly, we can be present in the now moment and present to our own intuition. And when our gut says, something's not right. And our brain says, well, you're not actually seeing a crime being committed. But your gut says that's not right. And human beings, when we ask, well, why didn't you call when you saw something? The big term of when you see something, say something. Why didn't you? And they feel like they need to be the social worker, police officer, lawyer, prosecutor, and judge. They feel like they need to see the crime, have the CSI, evidence of the crime. That's not your job. Your job is to say, I feel something. I see something and I had a gut feeling and I don't know. I don't have the evidence. That's somebody else's job. Else's job. And I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get dragged into anything. It's anonymous.
Yeah.
You can call and report if you think somebody is being labor trafficked, if you think somebody is being sex trafficked, if you think somebody is being abused, and I mean an animal, a child, a woman, a man, if your gut says this situation, something's not right, my intuition is saying something's not right, there are numbers you can call anonymously and let the authority, it's not going to come back to you. There's not going to be a neon sign that says, this woman just caused trouble. No, this woman or man listened to their intuition and made a call. If there isn't a problem, wonderful. But I'll tell you what I've learned over the years is when people have a gut feeling about something, they're almost always right. So if your gut is almost always right, then you calling is the right thing to do. If you see something, say something. And people give examples like if, you see a man or a woman spending too much time with the child, if you see a child who comes from a lower economic situation owning, more luxury things than they did prior, somebody's picking them up down, at the end of your block and you're seeing this stuff, all of those examples, you can actually Google what are examples of, and it'll tell you. But what I would tell you is beyond what is visual, go with your gut and say something. And, I think it was Victor Vieth. I love Victor Vieth, Vieth. He's an amazing advocate for children. He's part of the Zero Abuse Project and has written some of his own books and was a prosecuting attorney for crimes against children for the White House for many years. Brilliant guy, one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And he said, if we stopped abusing children right this minute, it would take 3 generations, but all this fallout, and when we think about it, all this fallout would be eradicated in 3 generations. We look at animal abuse, child abuse, and then elder abuse, and all this abuse. And we look at it individual boxes and we follow its roots down to its genesis. It is almost always that individual had been abused as a child. So much. So if we want to change the world, and I love I love you were talking about pandemics and 9/11. And we look at everything and we look at who's in charge, whether you're pro-Trump, pro-Biden, Greta with environmental science and all the save the penguins and all this stuff. Follow those human beings and follow them down, their life down to what happened to them when they were children. And you would feel so justified in your feelings of imperfection, because it's all of us. And when you have wounded people running the show, it's going to be a shit show, right? And so when people say, Catherine, how can we make a difference? What can we do? They don't always like the answer. My answer is, do your work. Do your work. If you want to change the world, do your work. You want to change the dynamics of your family. If you think your family is, a Jerry Springer show, you want to change the dynamics of family, do your work. Be the person that says, okay, it's time to stop this perpetual motion, stop and do my work. And how you know when you've done enough work is when whatever used to throw you over the edge or triggers you less and less and less. And then one day you're like, wow, I didn't react to that. And man, I totally would have reacted to that before. That's how you know. So it could be a month's worth of work, could be one weekend workshop, or it could be 8 years of weekly therapy, whatever it is that you need. And that changes. I used to brag that, and I think it was a little bit of a brag when I would say, it's been 12 years since my last panic attack, post-traumatic stress episode, whatever. It's sort of like an AA person, I think. It's like, I've been clean and sober. I've got my chip. I've been clean and sober for 35 years, and then one day you have a drink and you say, I've been clean and sober 24 hours, and you get that one chip. It's like, oh man. So for me with panic, it was like, it was such a big deal. It just ran my life, and yay, 12 years without it. Got the second COVID shot. And, that month I had a big panic attack, and I felt like I lost my chip. And then a bunch of anxiety happened after that. And, that's the way it is with healing. Is you're going along really great. And sometimes either for medical reasons in my case, or a life event happens, you kind of go back to the drawing board. But that doesn't mean that all the work that you did was for naught, or that, see, I'm never going to get better, or whatever sort of dramatics. I prefer dramatics that you go through. It's just a process. It's just a journey. And how do you want to do the journey? Do you want to do the journey pretending that it's doom and gloom and the sky is falling and the predators are, why even bother and lock yourself up in your room? All the conspiracy theories that are out there for everything? Or do you want to use the power of pretending to say, you know what? I'm going to do good, be good, look for good, be one of the helpers, and move through with that loving feeling. Because at the end of the day, I like myself coming from that way versus coming from the constricted way or the contracted way, right? How do you want to be?
That again, it's one of these. And I really have to say, through your expertise, you shed so much helpful light on so much, whether it be about statistics and the vulnerability and how these things come with children. And so it goes. But you're so right in that we feel we lost our internal compass when we have a low moment, when there's a PTSD, when there's a night of insomniacal wrestling and replaying of this trauma and drama again and again. And yet, as I say, the PTSD never goes away, but we do have that obligation to learn how to dance with it. And we can, because I think that when you compassionately, as you articulated now, don't look at it as doom and gloom and that, okay, now I lost everything. Everything was a moot point. All of my work was for naught. It wasn't at all. In fact, all of your work up to that point as individuals is precisely why you can now get over that hump a lot easier and faster, having had a down moment, because of all that work. And so it actually helps you move through it more lucidly. And I think that we have to remember that we are resilient, brilliant human beings. And I always say, you know, if you are still here, I mean, that's why I always say it's one of these: put your hand on your heart, feel that that's your heartbeat. You're not done yet. You're still here. And so you have a reason to live, and you must do it. You know, it's a very small sliver of time that we get to borrow these vessels and be in this little tiny sliver of time in this big, beautiful world. And I think that while we're here in this very short life, we have to remember that life is for the living, as they say. And if we are still here, then don't let one down moment, one slip, one bump, one bit of turbulence interfere with your destination, with your destiny, with your journey, because for whatever duration you're blessed to enjoy that journey, enjoy it. And I just want to lastly add that at the beginning of this great conversation, and again, I'm so honored that to share this time with you. You really are Wonder Woman. People don't know. For anyone out there who doesn't know, that's a nickname for you because you've been seen scaling rocks in a Wonder Yeah, you're definitely one of the weightlifting, rock scaling, power bodybuilding people. But I applaud. But that being said, as far as Wonder Woman, you know, I'm honored to share time with you so much. And at the beginning of this conversation, I was saying how important and vital it is that we talk, that we get it out of ourselves. But something you shared with me that was so helpful, that I think is important for people to know, is that just because you must talk about it, you also must do that where it is deserved and where someone is not going to use that as a power play and enslave you in more of an emotionally abusive scenario and take your precious story and tender story and misuse and abuse it to hold something over you. And this is where you shared with me, you don't have to stand on every mountaintop and tell everybody who will listen that you were trafficked and that this happened and you were raped and blah, and all of it. And especially as we move through that vicious, eviscerating animal of shame, it can be daunting to even speak about it because you think everyone's going to think you're trying to elicit sympathy or whatever it be. But when you get the courage up to speak, I know for years I didn't know how, and I would tell a boyfriend here or there some diluted version of it, and even then there was judgment and there was strangeness. And when you finally have come out, so to speak, as I also did much later in life, I mean, we're talking nearly 2 decades afterward, and in my late 40s, and comparatively, I'm now level 51, just to put it into perspective, but only a handful of years ago. And then once doing that, of course, there's no going back. But what you did share with me was choose appropriately. You will not always be in a welcome environment where being a survivor and speaking up to that is welcome. In fact, many of the organizations, as you know, are strictly looking for the money. Here's our donation page. They don't want the survivor story. They don't want you to give a speech for them. They don't want your article. They don't want you to lead a seminar on healing or do some good for. Here's the donation page. And it's sad, but that is the way that a lot of it works. And when you understand that, you recognize that when you choose to speak about it, make sure you are in a loving environment, make sure it is with someone who deserves to hear your story, and where you are not setting yourself up to be misused. Because unfortunately, whether it be a certain report or a certain survivor organization only looking for the almighty dollar, or a certain person who feigns interest so that they could exploit you. You've seen a lot of survivors exploited, and that's an entire other conversation, perhaps for another day. But I just think it's important, having started this conversation with the impetus of we must speak, Yes, albeit choose carefully and make sure that you do value the sacredness of what you have worked so hard to navigate and heal from with other people who are on your team for your healing and for you being the best you that you can be. And a lot of times that's another survivor or someone who you have, as you say, with instinct, sensed and connected that they are coming from love and they are pulling from up above with that godlike mystique, as I say, in everything that they seek. And that is where I have now learned is a genuine zone to speak about that, and save and table your story when you feel in your gut and through instinct that it is not the right environment for that. It doesn't need to be on a marquee just because you lived it, but it does need to come out of you in the right environment, I think.
I'm so glad you said that, LBR, because I have watched so many survivors get exploited. An artist doing pictures of survivors, takes pictures, dresses survivors up, takes a bunch of pictures, and then says that she's, this great advocate for survivors just to get her name out there, and didn't compensate any of the survivors that she took pictures of. But she's going from place to place, all gallery to gallery all over the country, getting money for her to take more pictures of survivors who she just exploited, or even church groups who, they want to see. There are people who like the Jerry Springer show versus, the late Oprah shows, and they want to see the dysfunction and the crying. And I'm thinking, as I'm watching this survivor, is she high right now? Right? I'm watching her going, wow, this is somebody who's really unhealthy and is breaking down and is giving way too much detail. And they're just the audience is just eating it up. Right. And I'm thinking, what you're exploiting her. Who put her up there? Whose idea was this? And I see that a lot. And we have a woman here in Maine named Dee Clark. And right out of the gate several years ago, she was like, don't let him exploit you. She works with survivors on the street. And you never see her putting the people that she helps out on a dog and pony show for money. She just doesn't. And she won't speak someplace if she's not paid to speak there. If you want her to talk about her work and amazing work that she does, or share anything about her, she needs to be paid like any other speaker you would. So that's amazing. I loved her, and what I've seen is just I was really, anytime I've used a survivor for anything, I've had a hairdresser come and a makeup artist come and the highest photographer. They got to keep the pictures. They were paid, they signed a contract, they were paid to be there. That they were really honored and respected, and they had to be so far along in their healing journey, or I wouldn't use them. Same thing with volunteers. Volunteers would say, hey, we want to help stop trafficking US. You meet them for coffee. They start breaking down, telling you about their story. You're not a good fit. This is not, again, I keep saying Jerry Springer, but you get the idea. And just because you're a survivor doesn't mean you need to tell people you're a survivor. That's a part of the boundaries. You're absolutely right. And particularly with the internet, you can't unsend that. You can't unpost that. You put something out, it is out forever. How is it going to affect your family? How is it going to affect your work? I talked to my friends and family and mate before I ever came out in a public way. Do you have any questions? Is there something that you don't know? Is this okay with you? I used my maiden name in the beginning because I didn't want, and my husband got mad and said, I'm proud of you, please use, but it was all a very thoughtful process. And it doesn't have to be forever. If there's a moment in time that you want to add your name to something or do something, great. Doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. You don't have to do a nonprofit. How come everybody wants to do a nonprofit? You don't have to do that. Align yourself with what speaks to your heart. Stay in your narrow lane, because it's vast, right? If it's anything, if it's Alzheimer's, if it's cancer, if it's saving animals, there's so much out there. Find the thing that touches your heart. And if you're a survivor, but you want to save the red Lincoln Rose, just because you're a survivor doesn't mean you have to do anything survivory. You can save the red Lincoln Rose from that terrible beetle that keeps eating my roses. Whatever it is, what I've learned is that in giving back, you receive more than you give. It's just, for my mental health, feeling like I have value and purpose in giving back is important, but it has to be a narrow lane. So I'm more potent, because if I try to do it all, then I'm diluted, and dilution is not the solution. Find one thing that really touches your heart. Doesn't have to be linked to anything in your past. Find something, give back, because it adds so much to you. And I don't know anybody that it hasn't. If you are a survivor, don't compare, do your work, be happy. There was a thing about the Egyptians that said, when you die, you go to this other place, and they ask you, in this lifetime, did you find your joy? And did you share your joy with others? I love that. There is absolute value in you doing nothing other than do your work and be a beacon of light. If that's all you did, you don't have to save the day or the Lincoln Roses or a child or whatever. If all you did was be a happy person who's kind on this planet, that is worthy and valuable in and of itself. Just that. So yes, it's a day on the calendar today. And I love days on the calendar because it gives us an opportunity to educate even more people. And that's my narrow lane. My narrow lane is, how can I educate people to be a beacon of understanding around this, and a beacon of hope and a beacon of love. That's beacon of understanding, hope, and love. There you go. That's my mission. Right?
I love that and mine, that's so beautiful. And I'll just echo this and say that when you do find those people who you can talk to, who do understand you, you're one of them. My dear mother is one of them, you know. And, when you have that, cherish, celebrate, revere, and keep near those people really, really cognizantly, and let them know. And while they're still here, because as the old adage goes, God will need them back someday.
Yeah.
And I think we have to give that love back, as you say, when we are blessed to have it near us. And if you can have that pas de deux, that tango, that dance, that cyclicality, that is the finesse. It's a big love fest, and it's a big circle. And this was a big love fest. And my hope in World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, and paying homage to the United Nations decision or designation, I hope that we've helped to hold the plane up a little today, and to make a difference in relinking other people, even in a tiny way, to their own strength and their own freedom of dismantling those self-imposed shackles of shame. And if we did that, then how grateful am I?
Just as having a conversation, I think people just witnessing you and I just sharing our thoughts and our heart and our conversation on a early morning, just chat. this is what we do. You and I have these conversations, and we go this deep every time we have a conversation. And
We do.
you know, one of the things that I love about you is your passion. You are one of the most passionate people I've ever witnessed. The way you feel about your cooking, you know, your narrow lane, what brings you joy, you know, your cooking, and how you talk about the food, how you talk about the process, how you talk about the history of what you're cooking, and where the animals come from or the vegetables come from. And it is, you know, it's palatable. You can just feel it, just comes right through the screen. That is who I want to learn cooking from. That is who I want to cook for me. Same thing with a painter, same thing with whatever. How cool that you found the thing that just lights you and anybody who witnesses you up. You know, that's how I feel about children. Just, man, you just give me a children's book and I have them all over the place, and a kid, and oh my gosh, I become another person. I just love, or then another part of me. Love that. You know, so for our viewers, you know, be you, do you, you know, and love who you are, because we're the same. And look for your passion, you know, try different things. And it's World Trafficking Persons Day. Yep. Pay attention. If you see something, say something. Live your best life, be your highest version of you, and try to be, you know, find the sunshine for yourself and bring sunshine to others.
I love that. I love that so much. And speaking of you and culinary passions, I am going to go sear a coffee dusted prime tenderloin steak, black and blue and cold in the middle, or raw in the middle, if people must know. And I know that's yes. And speaking of your passion for children, you have a grown child who I believe you're tending to shortly too. But
yes.
Again, I'm Laurie Beth Robbins with my friend Catherine Ann Wilson, and I am just so grateful for today. And I hope that it trickles in and makes a difference and a little bit of a good jolt in everyone else's day too. But thank you. It's one of these for taking time.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie Beth.
And to our next conversation, because, I value those. I value you. So there.
I love you.
I love you more. All right. Thank you to everybody.
Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone. Ciao.